It is truly a pleasure to be speaking with you this evening, my time, noon-ish afternoon, your time. I want to make a little joke. This is in my long 40-year career here in public libraries in the genealogy space. This is the first time I've spoken to myself tomorrow. So thank you for that wonderful opportunity. No, it's been a pleasure working with your library and your talented staff there. And it's a real honor to spend time with you today talking about what's precious to us, what's dear to us, and that's our family history. The pursuit to find and preserve and to share our family stories. And that's just immensely important. There's almost nothing more important that we can do than to find and preserve and present our family stories. So thank you so much for that. When I told my team this morning that over the next few days, tonight and then over the weekend, I would be spending time with you wonderful people in New Zealand, the first exclamation out of a staffer who is a first generation person from Poland was, "You've been robbed." I said, "How have I been robbed?" And she commented that, "Oh, it's so beautiful there. You have to present to them from here. You should be there." And that was our best intentions last year when we started planning this. But thank you again. I want to begin with just a small little warning. So I'm at my library, like most of you are at that library in Auckland, and there will be a few kind of interruptive announcements made by our library because we'll be closing for the day as we're presenting this. So don't worry, I'm going nowhere. So if you can put up with just a few little small audio interruptions, we'll be okay. We'll be okay with that. So one of the topics that was picked for this evening was, can you talk to us about periodical literature? And it is a little bit odd when you think about it to talk about a medium for delivering information when you really want to talk about how best to do our family history research and how best to find our stories. So the reason why I've been fascinated and actually pretty dedicated to periodicals, serials, quarterlies, journals in the genealogy space is that for years, that's how most societies and many individuals communicated their information. Still, even in the 21st century, with all the technology, there are many historical and genealogical periodicals that have migrated to an online format, but still it's a great way to share information about a surname, about a geographic location, share information that you and I as family historians, as genealogists need. I really, even though it's kind of odd to talk about a format, we don't talk about microfilm genealogy, we don't necessarily talk about book genealogy, but here we're talking about periodicals in the genealogy space. And that's because they're so packed with information. And oftentimes that information may be a little bit challenging to ferret out, but I think it's really worth the effort. Hence the title of the presentation, Mining the Mother Lode. You know, anyone who has even a passing familiarity with mining knows that when you find that vein, that rich vein, it takes you to the mother lode. So let's begin. Why periodicals? Why did I pick this medium to talk about? Since 1985, which is like several lifetimes ago, our library, when I was like 5 years old, I'm just kidding, I was a little older than that, we started doing a subject index to periodicals in North America. Then we expanded it to the British Isles, and then we expanded it a little more to Europe, and we're ferociously subject indexing periodicals all the time. Why? Because they really are the mother lode for us as genealogical researchers. So why periodicals? Well, they're published by organizations that typically have a lot of collective expertise, if not a lot of individual expertise. And that expertise is about, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, about an area, about an ethnicity, a subject, a surname. It's about things that we value when we're trying to discover our family stories. Oftentimes, periodicals will contain will contain data or information that you find in few other places. They're richer in the aggregate than monographs, than books often are. And they oftentimes will publish data about not just records, but records and methodologies or strategies for using those records. So they're a great complement to book research using monographs, whether we find those monographs in paper or whether we find them online at Internet Archive or other information aggregators. Periodicals can really make a big difference in our research. So that's why periodicals are so important. So for the next few minutes, I'd just like to take us on a quick little stroll through the different types of periodicals and just see from your vantage point, whether from where you are right now or where you're doing your research, whether any of this holds true for you. And I'll show some examples from North America, but these kinds of societies, these examples really apply worldwide, where genealogical and family history material is published in a periodical or a serial format. So the first big type of periodical that we as family historians are going to find useful are genealogical society serials. The periodicals, whether they're newsletters or quarterlies or monthlies or annual journals that are published by societies. Those have a lot of gold for us to continue that mining motif. And I've kind of highlighted in red on the slide there. What do societies do? They transcribe, they abstract, they index all kinds of, and I'll use this technical term a couple times this evening, they abstract, index, and transcribe all kinds of stuff. You name it, whether they're records, whether they're secondary sources, primary sources, they give us access oftentimes to records that we can't find or couldn't find unless we physically go on site. And we know how challenging in 2020 it is to physically get on site anywhere. So they provide us with eyes and ears, if you will, in the place where we want to do our research. The second point, not only do they give us access to records, but they also provide an opportunity for us to have a voice or to hear other people's voices. What do I mean by that? Oftentimes they will take queries about family names, about institutions and organizations and ethnic groups in a particular area. So we can push forward a question and we can get a response from people in the area who should know. And as you can see in that second bullet point, resource lists, articles, historical articles, they help paint a context for our family history research. And we know that's really important. The third bullet point there is the one that's most consequential to me oftentimes, and that is the local society, whether local for you means your town or the next largest civil jurisdiction, or whether it's more like a state or a region of the country. However you want to define local, those society publications, they oftentimes will tell us specific information about repositories, about different types of records that are kept by particular civil jurisdictions or even ecclesiastical or church jurisdictions that we might not really ever know about if we're researching from a different area. So they, again, are kind of our eyes and ears, but they're our brains as well, because they're putting us in an area and telling us what are the best places to go. If you're going to query someone online, what are the places that have a good online ask or reference service? What are unique and forgotten sources? What's really unique to this area that you won't find in many other places? Or conversely, what's not unique to our country or our region at all, but no one ever looks at it because no one ever tells them about it or they don't know about it. So to me, that's the strength of genealogical society publications. We have people in specific areas, typically geographic areas, that have our same passion for family history and family story, and they know their area and are willing to publish and help us out. So just a few examples from the North American continent. There are a number of genealogical societies that publish over a fairly wide geographic area. So as you can possibly see on the right-hand side here, where I'm kind of moving my cursor around, there are a number of different counties that are covered by this one genealogical society. But still, no matter how small or compact or how large the focus, they're going to really just concentrate on that particular geographic area. The next one is a state publication, Rhode Island. It's a small state here in the United States, but we're going to zoom in on the table of contents page and notice they published some family stories, legacy. They've got the 1774 Census Index. They have some book reviews, and they have a list of photographers from a directory of a couple of cities. So they're kind of all over the map, except they're still in Rhode Island. They're still focusing on helping us access information and gain knowledge about sources and families in Rhode Island. So just a couple of examples of Genealogical Society publications. This one I just had to put in the slide deck here, the Idaho Genealogical Society. So whether you're familiar with topography of North America or not, Idaho and Indiana are about a half a continent away. So you wouldn't think that one publication would have anything to do with the other, but this is a great example of what some genealogical societies do that makes indexing these so important. So the Idaho Genealogical Society Quarterly is from a few years ago, about a decade ago, and sometimes the old ones have immense riches in them. Look at one of the articles. The Wilsons in Hancock County, Indiana. So Indiana and Idaho, about a half a continent away. How did that article get in there? And how would you and I, as family historians, ever find it without some kind of comprehensive index? Well, I'll answer the second question first. We'd be really hard-pressed, because who in their right mind would look in Idaho for information on Indiana? Now, I may make a faux pas here, but I'm going to make an analogy, and I hope I'm right. It would be like looking in New Zealand for really strong information about Poland. You may find some information, but I'm going to guess not an uber large amount of information. Well, that's like Idaho and Indiana. How did this article get in this quarterly? Well, someone clearly migrated from Indiana to Idaho. It's not a common migration trail. There's no real massive amounts of chain migration there. But that's how some, what I call outlier information, gets into Genealogical Society publications. They have a vehicle, they want to share this information. So this doesn't really fit the format that I told you about what state societies and smaller jurisdictions typically collect, but it's interesting nonetheless. Here's a more typical table of contents page from the Idaho Genealogical Society Quarterly. And again, they're all over the place, date-wise and record-wise. So every issue of a quarterly or a monthly newsletter, you get a taste of all kinds of things that are possible record-wise and information-wise in their specific area. And as a researcher, to use poor English here, to use a double negative, how can you not want to do that? You know, how can you not use that? You can't not use that. You have to use that. A lot of family historians love to context their family history research with photographs, and these are immense sources of unique photographs for the time period when your ancestor may have been in a particular place. Even if you don't find a photograph specifically with your ancestor, I don't know about you, but I love to find photographs of what life was like, whether it was labor, farming, any kind of industry, schools, churches, to be able to see where my ancestor would have worshiped or worked or raised a family. That puts our family into context. There's kind of a theme going around here in the middle of North America, and that is research in 4D. And it's a little phrase that a couple societies came up with. What does 4D mean? It's just a shorthand for trying to put your research in the most robust context possible. And I'll be talking about that in one of my presentations at the expo this weekend, putting our research in the most robust context. And periodical literature helps us do that. So picture of a schoolhouse. I spend a lot of time, probably too much time, my wife would tell you, with genealogy and family history and periodicals. So they're chock full of funny things too. So this came out of an Ohio newspaper in 1868, but it was republished by a Genealogical Society periodical. They misspelled delirium in the title, but delirium tremens, and you all can read that for yourself. Chicago, big city here. There's so much whiskey there that a lot of mosquitoes died after taking a bite out of the citizens there. Another pretty funny one from the early 20th century, again having to do with imbibing with alcohol. The eyes of Abraham popped wide in amazement when the 63-year-old rancher returned to his home after paying a $150 fine in 1936. That was a substantial amount of money for illegally possessing liquor. 100 ducks were staggering all over the ranch because law enforcement had emptied his gallons of brandy into the duck pond. So you can find all kinds of things, even a little bit of levity in these periodicals. Don't want to get too sidetracked, but as valuable as periodicals are the newspapers and wherever we're researching. And a lot of Genealogical Society periodicals take extracts from newspapers. So just more examples of Genealogical Society publications. This one's from a county area in North Carolina. So they're doing estates, World War I draft, some families, road work. I mean, they're taking a deep dive into 5 or 6 counties in North Carolina. And when you get a publication that's going to give you not just vital and enumerations, but road work and draft registration cards and family compilations, you're getting a lot of really good information. An Ohio Genealogical Society one, every year they publish a list of people who have proven themselves back to one of the founding ancestors. You might think, Curt, big deal, who cares? Well, what this list of inductees at their banquet is giving us, it's giving us the founding ancestor, sort of the pioneer frontier ancestor, the date they came to Warren County, and then where they settled, what townships. So there's an amazing amount of information here. I call it actionable information. So any of those are surnames that we're researching. Now we have a specific place and a time of arrival that we can begin to collect other records and to build our case. So that's the first type of records, Genealogical Society publications. The second really important, I believe really important class of periodicals are the Historical Society periodicals. Those are published not by genealogical societies, but by historical societies. I think this is pretty universal throughout the world, pretty international, but I know for a fact that it's very true in North America and in many places in the British Isles where I've specifically taken a deep dive. Historical society publications tend to be overlooked by genealogists, and you might at first blush say, why? Well, I hope I'm not committing heresy here, but sometimes to our own detriment, we focus on surnames almost exclusively. And why I say to our own detriment is if we don't put our ancestors in the most robust context possible, that's going to be injurious to our research. We're not going to find as many records. What I like about historical societies, and this may sound a little strange, is that they don't focus so much on individuals or families. They focus, as that first bullet point shows you, on organizations, events, and institutions. Now, I've heard over the years, and again, I've been in the genealogy space about 41 plus years, 41 years and a couple months. And a lot of genealogists will say, well, I don't really care about that. I don't want to learn about the school or the church or chain migration or how they settled or where they came from. I just want to know about the family that I'm interested in. Well, many times, as I'm sure all of you have found, many times it's doing the work in the areas and finding what records exist that provide us with the information we need to be more successful as family historians. So I really love Historical Society publications, and I wish this wasn't true, but typically they're more heavily sourced, more footnotes, more endnotes, more and richer bibliographies than Genealogical Society publications. Shouldn't be the case because we know how important citing our sources is, how important that is, but it often is the case. So the second bullet point is why I put that in there. They're more heavily sourced and noted. And the third point, they tend to have more photographs. But I really like that second point, heavily sourced and noted. My colleagues here at the Allen County Public Library know that I am a citation analysis nut. I never, when I get a new periodical, I never read the thing first. I go to the end of every article or the end of a lengthy quarterly, and I look for the bibliography. And I look through the notes, the end notes of the bibliography, to see all the various sources that were used to see if any of those might apply to the research that I'm trying to do. And then I go and read the article. And I've made some marvelous, just wonderful discoveries because I'm a citation analysis nut. I love bibliographies, and I've gotten a lot of riches out of them. So one of my best examples is the Missouri Historical Review. I have no kin, I have no family in Missouri that I'm aware of, but this one is a classic State Historical Society publication. You can skim down those titles real quickly: Child Savers and Newsboys, German Radicals, African American Citizenship, and With the Brain of a Man, a Heart of a Woman, Missouri Women and Rural Change. And you might think, what does this have to do with genealogy, Curt? Why are you wasting my time? Well, this is what I get excited about. Every article has dozens of notes. So almost, not quite, but almost, who cares about the article? Let's go to the notes, because in the notes, they'll tell us. Let's use the second example as a key. They'll tell us about Germans in St. Louis. Not just the focus of the article, but they'll tell us sources for finding Germans and African Americans in St. Louis. 95 notes for us to explore. So in those three articles, 179 notes. I kind of list there on the slide why and what those notes are about. Histories, unique publications, ethnic compilations, newspapers, government documents. Oh my gosh, whenever a government publishes anything, no matter where the government is in the world, it's worth paying attention to. Some we quickly discard as not relevant or useful, but a lot of it we can use, because governments are after what, usually? I like to say two things. I'm painting with a little bit of a broad brush here, but two things governments are after, you can smile or not: your money and what you do for a living and how you're educated. So when you can get those two things, three things rolling together, and the government publishing, you can find a lot of great information. In large red print at the bottom of the slide, that's what I just articulated to you. Citation analysis. I don't care if the three articles in that Missouri Historical Review have nothing to do whatsoever with my family. I'm researching in Missouri, and in the areas focused on by those articles, I'll find a lot of really good and neat information in those publications. So that's why I get excited about Historical Society publications. They come in all flavors. So that was sort of a state historical society. This is more of a local county historical society that tends to focus on people who have immigrated to the country, to the Texas area to do mining and railroading. So it's all shapes and sizes, which is good for us. And this is from that same great state of Texas. Notice this one article has circled in the bottom, hard to read probably, 42 footnotes for just this one pretty short article. And you can scan up the page, and even though this is a Texas article, they have a newspaper listed from my state of Indiana. Again, that's about a quarter of a continent away. It's like, well, why is that there? Here's some more information about African Americans, another reference to the Indianapolis Recorder down at the bottom on the left-hand side. So a lot of good information in this one article. The favorite journal I like to cite, haven't been to Hawaii yet, but my colleagues think New Zealand is even better than Hawaii, so I'll put that at the top of my bucket list. In the one journal article, and this is consistent year after year, they publish 4 quarterlies of more than 300 pages. In this one quarterly, which you really can't see the table of contents page, so don't worry about it, but there's 11 historical articles, 11-page bibliography. So Curt's happy. He's a citation analysis nut, and he's happy, but 717 total footnotes. That's pretty amazing. A lot of good historical information in that. Moving quickly to our third type of publication are the surname publications. There are many societies whose existence just focuses on one particular surname. Excuse me. Those I don't value quite as highly, and I always hesitate when I say that, because I fear some people will just ignore them. No, I just mean look for them, use them, but please don't stop there. As family historians, we often so much focus on the surname. We don't pay enough attention to geography and to ethnicity and to religion. And all of those should be search keys for us. But since there are societies, surname societies that publish, we should look for those. Look for our surname. We're all familiar with surname societies. Some, to be a real authentic card-carrying member, you have to prove that you're descendant from one individual. Others, all you have to have is the same name. If all of us this evening or this afternoon where you're at, if all of us today change our surname to Rose, we could all join the Rose Family Association because that's all that's required. Other organizations, their members and novice members are trying to prove ancestry back to a particular common ancestor or a group of ancestors that migrated to a particular country. So all kinds of family publications, regrettably, at a faster rate than any other organization that publishes periodicals in the genealogy space. Surname societies are going by the wayside. This year, we have picked up the archives of massive archives of two family surname organizations that are no longer able to stay in business, but we're cooperating with 2 or 3 more to help them stay in business. So exciting things. Neat articles are published, so they're talking about DNA and how that's benefiting the research that's going on. I like this particular one. It's the Van Zandt family record, and they expose a lot of great information. So tombstones, anybody with a Van Zandt name, searching ancestors, in memoriam, people related, married into Van Zandts, etc. But my favorite amongst this particular issue is the skeletons in the closet feature. So James Bocce Van Zandt. So they're talking about this, let's call him a less than savory character in the Van Zandt family. And so they begin talking about his travails. And then we see his domicile, the Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia. And we see his dining area. And we see that wonderful holiday photo of Mr. Van Zandt. So there's all kinds of things. And I love the publications that don't take themselves too seriously, that actually take glee and pleasure in all of the people who are of their family name, of their surname. So a lot of things we can find from surname publications. The fourth kind of publication that I think we should pay a lot of attention to are the ethnic society publications. Depending upon the ethnic group, they may not be as plentiful as we would like them to be, but we should still look for them because there's so much good data that's published. And when you can narrow down on an ethnic group, you get a lot of great historical context. You also usually get great bibliographies and footnotes. Again, look at the second bullet point there. They tend to be heavily sourced and referenced. Again, typically way more heavily sourced, regrettably, than our Genealogical Society publications. So there's a lot of really good information. And when you can hone in on a particular ethnic group, Poles, Irish, Isle of Man, African Americans. So you're hearing the first of these annoying closing announcements, so I will mute my mic for just a bit.
The library will close in 30 minutes.
So now you know that our library is closing in 30 minutes, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to let you guys drive this one. I have all the rest of the day. So Ethnic Society Serials, wonderful, wonderful publications. I just have a few examples here. Look at the specificity of this one. Special interest newsletter dedicated to promoting genealogy and history of German-speaking immigrants who settled in Creek and Washington Townships, Will County, Illinois. This is still being published today. Think about the specificity. They're talking about German-speaking immigrants in 2 townships in 1 Illinois county. The Lensman is not alone. There are many other publications with almost, if not equal to this kind of laser specificity. So to get that much information to publish, they're going very deep, very, very deep. into sources, into families, etc. Amazing. Louisiana African Americans, ethnic group, kind of contexted geographically. So again, there's some specificity there. Their brief newsletter, Historical Society of North German Settlements in Western New York. Say that 2 times fast. Again, a lot of specificity there, including photographs, family stories about how they got from the old country to the new country, an amazing amount of detail. And you'll find that with most ethnic publications, they will hone in on occupation for that particular group. They'll hone in on where that group migrated around the world and why, what prompted them to migrate. And they'll give a lot of evidence, photographic evidence, bibliographic evidence of what they're writing in their publication. And this is just another example of a journal, French Canadian Heritage Society in Michigan. So amazing amounts of data in Surname publications. So that covers the big 4. I want to layer in just 2 more very quickly, and then talk a little bit about how we can access these kinds of periodicals. There's always kind of an other category. This is my other category. I call them special interest serials. Things that don't quite fit neatly into other categories, but can be really beneficial to our family history research and can give us a few smiles along the way. I call them off the beaten path, and typically they also have the generous number of notes and references, so they're worth using to at least springboard our research. So the Mayflower Quarterly. So a lot of people in the North American continent are really excited about finding their early ancestors on this continent. I like finding my ancestors in the old country, what we call in North America the old country, where they came from, what they did, and why they came here. And one of my most favorite and most beneficial questions is why. And I would encourage all of us as family historians to use that question a lot. Why? Why are they here? Why is he working here? Why did this person marry this person? Oftentimes in the answer to why, we get some great family stories and we get great springboards to other information. But before I digress, Mayflower Quarterly, they publish articles after articles after articles about families that settled in the New England area. One of my favorite publications, this one and the next one, Tomb with a View. I have 4 sons. They're all young men now. But they, from an early age, I would take them with me. I'd take them here to the library. They'd help me do some preservation photocopy. We'd go to cemeteries. They love cemeteries. You know, most kids are at least a little bit kind of freaked out about cemeteries and don't want to go there, or they think they're just places of sadness. Well, my kids went to the cemetery with me, and so they know about tombstone iconography. They know about cemetery plots and family plots. And it was kind of interesting when their school groups went to the cemetery, my sons would be telling them, don't be standing on top of that grave. You need to stand over here. You need to do this. That symbol means that. But before I digress, Tomb with a View, great periodical publication that tells us about tombstone iconography. How do we find carvers? How do we find monument companies? Way more than just reading the headstone. And I like it for the reason, the depth of information that it gives, but I also like it because it prompts us as researchers to remember, look for everything. Don't leave anything unexplored. Where did the monument come from? Who carved the monument? Why are these icons or symbols on the monument? You all know the verses to that. And then the other one, Violent Kin. You know, I'm just a little bit contrarian and a little bit snarky on occasion. You'll have to talk to my team about how much snarky or contrarian I am. But Violent Kin is actually a publication that tries to debunk myths or lore about infamous people. So this particular article is showing what's a fake Jesse James, a notorious person here in North America, what's a fake and what's his actual handwriting. And they do other things like that. So it's kind of a fun little publication. Not a whole lot of genealogical information in there, unless, of course, you're related to someone notorious. But fun nonetheless. And there's all kinds of publications across North America, the British Isles, and Europe that just help us do better research. So Newspaper Archives Online, 10 ways to jumpstart your research. The family history, making family history simple. Well, we know there's nothing really simple about family history. It's kind of a wonderful long path of discovering sources, seeing how that information incorporates or doesn't into our family history, into the hypothesis that we have about who's a member of our family and who's not. But we sure know that it's a lot of fun. And then I have this kind of hazed out, so it's not in red. Other types of periodicals, all the things we just talked about, the big four, and then the special interest groups, all of them can be now digital. And there's a lot of periodicals that were born digital, and a lot of periodicals that just talk about how to use technology in the genealogy space. So I've kind of created this sort of mushy sixth category about, okay, there are these other outlier periodicals about how to use technology well, and there are born digital periodicals. So if we're just looking in paper, or just looking on the shelves, the physical shelves of our archives and our libraries, we're not going to find those. So just a couple of examples. I think this may be the largest one in the world as far as subscriber base, but Dick Eastman's online genealogy newsletter, I think his daily subscribers nudges around 70,000 individuals, and he covers all kinds of things. He's very savvy about technology. He has a team that works with him on pushing forward other genealogically significant information, but he really does tend to play a lot in the technology side, whether the technology is DNA, whether the technology is a particular program, GEDmatch, GEDCOM, all the programs from yesteryear that people are trying to open up with today's programs, and how we can preserve things better digitally. It's really an interesting one. And then our own library, we publish at the end of every month. You can tell that Curt's a contrarian because most people publish on the 1st to the 15th. We publish on the last day of every month, something we just call Genealogy Gems. And we use that really as a marketing tool and an education tool. Here are some neat things in our collection, or some neat websites that we've stumbled across, and here's what you can do with them. And then I write a short little column for it every month about methodology, or about how we might do better research and how we might do better as family historians. This is just the table of contents page from May, where we talk about census substitutes and Bible records. And one of my team members is really great about using software packages to help us save and preserve and touch up for family reunions and for books that we might publish online, how to touch up torn, mildew-stained photographs. Just a lot of neat information. And this is a newsletter that I like to call disposable. You read it, you say, yep, like that. Nope, the rest of it doesn't matter. Hit delete. Another one will come in next month. And there are many individuals, though, that do save these in many libraries as well. So a lot of born digital, we can just find so much information in genealogical periodicals. So can't stress enough how important they are. The heading there, continually published variety. That's what we can really expect to find in periodicals, continually published variety. Whether it's print, yes, people are still flipping periodicals on DVDs and Blu-rays. I think you should move from print to online, but that's just my professional opinion. So print, on disc, online, wherever you can find them, look for them. The second bullet point, the indexing is a little frustrating and a little challenging, let's say, because some index is by issue, some by volume, and then there's precious few cumulative or comprehensive indexes, and we'll take a better look at that in just a moment. So published all over the place, you'd be surprised, no matter where you are in the world, you'd be really surprised about the number and the amount of data in these. So I like to tell people, if you're still unconvinced that periodicals are an important part, important resource container, if you will, I would argue that you're going to miss about a third of all the information that's available to help you document your family story if you decide to ignore the data that's in that container called periodicals in the genealogy space. Maybe you have so much information about your family that you can throw a third of it away and still be very successful and still find all the ancestors that you're looking for. I can't afford to do that. I need every piece of information I can possibly get. So I'm not going to throw away a third. Here at the Allen County Public Library in Fort Wayne, we're the, apologies for the immodesty, but we're the second largest family history research repository in North America. We have north of 1.2 million physical items. And I can tell you that an entire city block worth of shelving, linear shelving, is the latest issues of the periodicals that we subscribe to. Why do we do that? Because they're just throwaways? No, because there's so much information in these periodicals, and our customers have benefited richly from those. So how do we find the periodicals? Okay, Curt, you've convinced me. How do you find them? Well, first and foremost, as good sleuths, as good family history detectives, we should be very familiar with looking in online directories and print directories of all types. Look for as much information as you possibly can find about where directories are, and then look for directories that will give you historical societies, ethnic societies, genealogical societies, heritage societies, family history societies, depending upon your corner of the world. For North America, you look at the US GenWeb or World GenWeb for the rest of the world. WorldCat, I should have put a .org. That's a free site. I'll be talking about that during the expo. WorldCat has 2 billion, that's million with a B, 2 billion records from over 10,000 libraries around the world. Look in WorldCat for genealogical, historical, ethnic, and surname publications. You'll be amazed at what you find. The fourth bullet point, I call it targeting library catalogs, target a library catalog. So if you know that there's an archive or a library in the area where you believe your ancestor was or where you want to do research, look in that library's catalog and look for periodicals. There's my favorite friend there in the fifth bullet point, citation analysis. When you find a book, a monograph, or a periodical, any article online, look at the citations, the endnotes and the footnotes. Oftentimes you'll find a periodical listed there as one of the sources. And then of course, our good old friend Google. I know people tire of hearing others say, well, just Google it. Oh, Curt, don't worry about those other things, just Google it. Well, Google really should be a genealogist friend. Maybe not best friend, but a genealogist friend. So, okay, it's our friend. That doesn't mean we use it exclusively. It means we use it intelligently. So Google Internet Archive is digitizing material from around the world. So that's, in a nutshell, how we find periodicals. And then once we find them, where do we find indices for the surnames that we're interested in, for the religion and the ethnic group that we're interested in? And these 6 are pretty much it. The first 3 make a lot of sense. At the end of every issue, sometimes there's an index. Sometimes at the end of every volume, meaning at the end of a year or 18 months, depending on their publication cycle. And then some periodicals will do what's called a periodic accumulation. So maybe every 5 years, they'll index that 5 years worth of journals and newsletters, or every 10 years. There are precious few, but they do exist. Of this 4th example, geographic area, there are some geographic indexes. Here's an index to Ohio, genealogical periodicals. Here's an index to County Clare, Ireland, periodicals. Look for those. They're harder to find because there are fewer of them. Subject and ethnic indexes, even more difficult. Here's another announcement coming.
The library will close in 15 minutes. If you wish to check out library materials, please do so at this time.
And we always say them twice.
May I please have your attention? The library will close in 15 minutes. If you wish to check out library materials, please do so at this time.
So if you're going to check out any materials here, you're going to have to do so soon. No. The last one, comprehensive index, there are precious few. There's only 2 comprehensive indexes for North American and British Isles that I'm aware of. I think there are some country indexes in Europe and British Isles that maybe are not quite as well, not as comprehensive of a coverage. So let's look a little bit. Increasingly, all these indexes are online. So we should look for those. I want to talk to you for just a few minutes, and then I'll open it up for questions about the Periodical Source Index, or PERSI. You can see in the center of this slide here, PERSI, Periodical Source Index. We've partnered with Find My Past. There's about 3 million, 2.95 million subject records for periodicals all over North America, British Isles, and Europe in the Periodical Source Index. We'll just skip through this slide, but PERSI really is a great comprehensive access key. These are the 8 major countries that are covered. There are other countries covered. We have some from Poland, etc. But United States, Canada, British Isles, and Germany are the big 4. France, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa also have coverage. And the next slide will show you the number of articles, subject articles we have indexed in the Periodical Source Index from publications from these geographic areas. Find My Past is the way you get to that. You can actually go to Find My Past and search PERSI for free to see how many citations will pop up, but you have to be a subscriber to actually access the article. So what PERSI is not, it's not an every name index, it's a keyword or subject index. And again, we've gone through this PERSI at Find My Past. I want to go through this slide pretty quickly to get you to here, and I want to leave enough time for questions. So this is what a PERSI search screen looks like, right? So it's a little bit challenging to see, but I want to kind of show you how it looks. So we're going to put in a surname. See, here's the who, where, and what else. Surnames go here, a geographic location goes here, and a keyword like cemetery, date, the Napoleonic War, something else goes here. I wish it weren't so, but it's better to search PERSI online at Find My Past if you only use one of these 3 instead of using 2 or 3 in combination. I think that will be updated at some point. So I put in Shackelford family and I got 48 results. That's a manageable number. With most online data files, look at the facets on the left-hand side, sometimes on the right-hand side, but here it's on the left-hand side. See how you can narrow your search results if you don't want to look through all of them. So Shackelford family, and I found 48 results. I'm kind of excited about what's over here on the right-hand side, because where my mouse is kind of rolling around, we can click on that paper and we can actually see the citation, what periodical it's in, etc. Over here on the right-hand side, though, that says that Find My Past has gotten rights to digitize the journal, and you can actually take a look at the journal. So we're going to click through. This was one of the citations, was in the Missouri Historical Review. See, I told you I like the Missouri Historical Review, even in the olden times. So there's the Shackelford family. It's on page 192. We can click right through, and there's the article, the speech of Thomas Shackelford before the Old Settlers Association in 1906, well more than a century ago. So I put in a different surname, Milner, and you'll see I got 194 results. If I click the box underneath it saying I want the name variance, I go from 100 plus to almost 500 results. Sometimes getting a larger search pool and then limiting it by these facets on the left-hand side, helps us. So just another search strategy for you. So I put in a particular county where my wife's family, one of her lines hails from, 366 from this county in Kentucky, but I have all these facets to narrow that down. So I'm not really that worried about a large search result set. I can click on a facet, and I clicked on subject, and this tells me from McCracken County, Kentucky, there's 6 articles that are just census records. There's only 1 deed article. There are 16 directory articles. There are 11 military records, cemetery military records. Excuse me, not 11, but 1, and 15 cemetery records. If I click on any of these boxes, that takes that 366 just down to that specific subject. So it's a pretty great way of narrowing your search results. So I did what's a lousy search. I searched for Georgia, 32,000 results. What do you do with 32,000 results? Nothing. You research, you refine your search. And I did that over here by facets, and I picked the county facet. So I picked counties, and then look, if I'm interested in Bibb County, I went from 30,000 to 226. I can take that 226 and reduce it down again by subject. So Percy online is a great way to get a big search result and then use your facets to narrow it down so that it's pretty laser focused on what you want. Cumbria, England, 285 search results. And we can click on church records and we get that down to 25, and we can easily go through that list. And there's the 25 records from that particular area of England. I think I have overshot my time just a little bit, and I apologize for that. I'm going to stop my screen share and open it up for any questions that you may have.
So the question is, do you have a coordinated project for indexing? Do you use volunteers, or is it librarians indexing for you?
Great question. Actually, neither. We have a small but dedicated staff that are just basically employed to do the indexing. And it really is a very small staff. As a county library, we're sort of oversized for the resources of the community, but the community just loves the library. But we have about 2.5 FTE that are indexing and just love what they do. They find the humorous articles for me. Mm-hmm. We could use about 22.5 FTE instead of 2.5 FTE. But we've been at this for a quarter of a century. And we're going to continue until all the life is gone. But when the project originally started, the person who was sort of the head of the project for 6 months, and then I've been the head of the project ever since 1986, thought there was about 250,000 maybe articles in the entire world in serials. And it was like, I think that might be a little low. So we're at almost 3 million articles. And I'm thinking we're maybe at 60% indexed worldwide, maybe. I think we're over 50, but we're no more than 60. Yeah. So
the question is the indexes linked to WorldCat or just the local library?
Great question. The short answer is no, it's not. The indexed articles are not linked to WorldCat. And I'm going to pause and say, yet. We're exploring a whole different discovery system for Percy. We have another little announcement coming on here.
We can really equate with that. We do that too.